Hi, everybody. This is my presentation. It is about Brown v. Board of Ed in 1954. It's a landmark Supreme Court ruling. It did deal directly with racial segregation in school districts, but this obviously has a lot of implications for current MLLs and ELs in our districts. This is Linda Brown and her father, Oliver Brown. They were the namesakes of the case. So, some historical context. This case sought directly to overturn Plessy v. Ferguson decision of 1896, which mandated that schools could be segregated if the facilities were separate but equal. 50 years later, public schools were very unequal. 17 southern border states still required racial segregation. The average southern state in 1952 spent 50% more on a white student than a black student. The Moton High School strike kind of set the stage and started the ball rolling for Brown versus Board of Ed. They they had a strike because their school had very, very poor facilities. The highest paid teacher in their school made less than the lowest paid teacher at a white school district in the same county. So they contacted the NAACP and asked to press a suit against the state of Virginia abolishing racial segregation in schools. So the goal of the NAACP, led by Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston, they made their goal immediate desegregation of schools. No relief other than that would be acceptable, they stated in their statement. So just to quickly sum it up, they pressed 5 suits in different states calling for an end to racial desegregation. Each one lost. The NAACP appealed, and they put all those 5 cases under the moniker Brown versus Board of Education. So Linda Brown, Oliver Brown, they brought their case to court in 1951. And she was being forced to walk 7 blocks and bus to a black school when there was a white school just 6 blocks from her home. So after they returned to court, the lawyers were sent home and told they would come back to re-argue the case. During that time, one of the chief justices died and was replaced with Ed Warren. He ruled unanimously on May 17th the Supreme Court on May 17th, 1954, ruled unanimously that the separate but equal doctrine had no place in public schools, and that separate but equal made schools inherently unequal. The victory was considered big at the time. The Amsterdam News of Harlem called Brown v. Board the greatest victory for the Black community since the Emancipation Proclamation. It inspired a wave of freedom rides in the South to desegregate public transportation, as well as sit-ins and voter registration efforts, and is widely considered to be one of the fueling factors of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. However, its long-lasting legacy and impact on education today is more controversial. With all deliberate speed was how the courts told schools to desegregate, so they didn't really give a clear way or time frame of how to do this. Many consider what has occurred over the past 40 or so years to be a quiet resegregation of our schools. Schools are funded by property taxes. That was the decision of the Milliken v. Bradley 1974 Supreme Court case, which Thurgood Marshall called a huge step backwards. This essentially is a barrier to integration in schools and resulted in more school segregation between economically advantaged and economically disadvantaged groups of students. I just want to end it with this quote by Nicole Hannah-Jones, who did The Problem We All Live With piece about integration. And here are 2 school districts. They're both in Long Island. They're 15 minutes away from each other. You can see the disparities between the 2 schools. And lastly, although Brown v. Board is not considered to have fulfilled its educational legacy, it did open up opportunities for MLLs and ELs in the country by, now schools, they have to provide bilingual education practices for MLLs and ELs, and without Brown v. Board, I don't know that might have been legal requirements. So here are the references I used. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks. Here is just a little bit of a closer look at those references.